The year was 1865, and the frontier was a land of both opportunity and death. The Civil War had ended, leaving scars that stretched across the nation, none more so than on Thomas Graves Grady. Once a soldier draped in Union blue, he now wandered the untamed West, a drifter seeking solace in the vast emptiness. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the rugged terrain as Graves approached a weathered trading post, its wooden facade battered by time and dust. Pushing open the creaking door, Graves stepped inside, the scent of stale tobacco and unwashed bodies assaulting his senses. The dimly lit room was filled with hardened men, their eyes narrowing as they assessed the newcomer. Graves, clad in a tattered duster and wide-brimmed hat pulled low, moved with the weary grace of a man who had seen too much. He approached the counter, placing a tarnished silver pocket watch before the shopkeeper, a wiry man with a hawk-like gaze. "Looking to trade for some provisions," Graves said, his voice gravelly from disuse. The shopkeeper eyed the watch, then Graves. "Ain't worth much," he replied, sliding it back. "Petticoats and pistols. +3. Heroes, heroines, and history. +3. Root-branched, tripod.com. +3. Before Graves could respond, the door swung open violently, and a group of outlaws sauntered in, their spurs jingling ominously. Their leader, a burly man with a jagged scar running down his cheek, scanned the room with a predator's gaze. "Well, ain't this a cozy gathering?" the leader drawled, his hand resting on the butt of his revolver. "How about y'all make a contribution to our cause?" The room tensed. Graves' hand inched toward his own firearm, the weight of it both a comfort and a curse. The shopkeeper's eyes darted nervously. One of the outlaws noticed Graves' subtle movement. "Petticoats and pistols. +2. Root-branch, tripod.com. +2. Heroes, heroines, and history. +2. Easy there, stranger," he sneered. "Wouldn't want that iron to misfire." Graves locked eyes with the leader. "Ain't looking for trouble," he said evenly. The leader chuckled darkly. "Trouble's already found you." In a heartbeat, chaos erupted. The leader drew his gun, but Graves was faster. His Colt barked, the shot echoing like thunder. The leader staggered back, clutching his shoulder. The other outlaws opened fire, bullets splintering wood and shattering glass. Graves dove behind a barrel, returning fire with deadly precision. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air as the skirmish intensified. When the smoke cleared, the outlaws lay sprawled, lifeless, save for their wounded leader who had managed to flee. The shopkeeper, pale and shaken, nodded his gratitude. "Reckon you earned those provisions," he said, voice trembling. Graves collected his supplies, the weight of the encounter settling heavily on his shoulders. He stepped back into the fading daylight, the horizon stretching endlessly before him. Mounting his horse, he rode on, the specter of violence trailing him like a shadow. Days bled into nights as Graves traversed the desolate landscape. The vast plains whispered with the ghosts of those who had come before, their dreams and desperations etched into the very soil. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, he spotted a thin column of smoke rising in the distance. Urging his horse forward, he approached cautiously. A modest homestead came into view, nestled against a backdrop of rolling hills. The scent of cornbread wafted through the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of tilled soil. Graves' stomach tightened with hunger, but he hesitated. His presence often heralded misfortune. Yet the allure of human connection, however fleeting, drew him in. As he neared, a child's laughter rang out. A young girl, no more than 6, chased a scruffy dog around the yard. Her mother, a woman with kind eyes and a weary smile, stood on the porch, wiping her hands on a faded apron. She noticed Graves and called out, her voice tinged with both caution and hospitality. "Evenin', stranger. Care to join us for supper?" Graves tipped his hat, dismounting. "Much obliged, ma'am." The interior of the cabin was humble but warm, illuminated by the soft glow of a kerosene lamp. The father, a sturdy man with calloused hands, extended a hand. "Name's Samuel. This here's my wife, Clara, and our little one, Lily." "Grady," he replied, shaking Samuel's hand. "Most folks call me Graves." They gathered around the wooden table, passing dishes laden with simple fare. The conversation was light, touching on the weather and the challenges of frontier life. For a moment, Graves felt a semblance of peace, the warmth of companionship seeping into the cracks of his fractured soul. As night deepened, Graves took his leave, declining the offer of a bed. He preferred the open sky, the stars as only witnesses. He made camp a short distance from the homestead, the crackling fire warding off the chill. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by memories of battle and loss. A sudden scream jolted him awake. Grabbing his rifle, he sprinted toward the homestead. Flames licked at the walls, casting grotesque shadows as raiders ransacked the home. Night crept over the prairie like a slow-moving shadow, spilling darkness across the grasslands that rustled under the soft hush of wind. The drifter's fire crackled low, no more than embers now, casting faint glimmers on the battered shape of a man whose body bore the price of too many lost battles. His name was Jack Callahan, a soldier once, but the war had stripped him of that title like a skin peeled from bone. What remained was a wanderer with hollow eyes and a rifle laid across his knees like a sleeping serpent. He didn't hear her coming. Silent as dusk on soft moccasins, she stepped from between the cottonwoods, a shape of shadow and earth, bearing none of the heavy-footed bluster of settlers or soldiers. She watched him for a heartbeat longer than was safe. Sun-darkened skin, wild beard, blood caked over a ragged bandage at his side, dirty, infected. She could smell the rot. But there was something else, a weariness deeper than wounds, an emptiness older than scars. White man, her voice was low, measured, wary, edged in a Lakota tongue first, then slower and rough English. "If you want to live, put down the gun." Jack didn't flinch, didn't even turn. "Been ready to die a long time," he rasped. She stepped closer, slipping from the trees like moonlight over stone. Her braids were black ropes laced with beads of bone and copper. Her doe-hide dress was stained with earth and medicine roots. Around her neck hung an amulet carved of river rock, shaped like the sun. "You are sick," she said flatly. He allowed himself a dry laugh, a bitter rasp from a throat cracked with thirst. "I'm worse than sick, lady. You are dying." Finally, his eyes, cold blue, rimmed with pain, slid to meet hers. "Then let me die." But her people knew something he didn't. The Lakota did not leave the wounded for the crows if they could be saved. And this man, broken and hollow as he was, bore the mark of a warrior, even if he no longer claimed the title. "I am Wiyan," she said. "Feather. I heal the sick. I guide the lost." Jack spat blood into the dirt. "You ain't never met lost like me." She crouched beside him, close enough now to see the fever glittering in his pupils, close enough to smell whiskey and blood-soaked leather. "I know death," she whispered, "but you are not ready for him." Maybe it was the way she spoke, not pleading, not commanding, but with quiet certainty. Maybe it was the tremble in his limbs that betrayed the pain he couldn't hide. Or maybe Jack Callahan, battle-worn drifter, killer of men, was too tired to argue. He let the rifle fall. It was not surrender. It was survival. By dawn, he lay beneath a canopy of cottonwood branches, sweat slicking his brow, body shaking with the fire of infection. Wiyan worked without pause, grinding roots, brewing bitter tea, washing the wound clean with stinging river water. His skin burned. His memories burned worse. Gunshots, screams, a battlefield soaked in blue and gray, men torn like meat, the stench of cannon smoke and horses dying in the mud. He clawed at the earth. "Easy," she murmured, pressing a cool hand to his chest. Her fingers were strong, calloused from years of work, from gathering wild herbs in the harsh prairie wind. "You fight ghosts." He gritted his teeth. "Ghosts fight me." Days passed. Time blurred. The fever broke. He woke to find her sitting across from him, mending a deerskin pouch, her face as unreadable as stone, yet not unkind. "You saved me," he said hoarsely. I bound your wounds, she corrected. The will to live, that is your own. Silence stretched between them like the river below the cliffs. Finally, he asked why. Her dark eyes lifted. Because you're not meant to die yet. Suspicion coiled in his gut. In this land, kindness came with cost. What did she want? Gratitude? Protection? A debt to call upon when the soldiers returned? But she only stood, gathering her things. The soldiers will come again, she said. Their war is over, but their fear is not. Jack's jaw tensed. He knew that truth well. They take what they want, he muttered. Land, gold, lives. Wiyaka's voice was quiet. They have taken enough. For the first time, he saw the grief in her, deep and quiet, as roots beneath the earth. Loss etched in the lines around her mouth. Sorrow braided into the black ropes of her hair. What happened? He asked before he could stop himself. Her gaze sharpened, like a knife unsheathed. They came in the night, she said, words flat as bone. Burned our lodges. Shot the old ones who could not run. Took the children. Jack felt the weight of her words like stones on his chest. He had seen it before. He had done it before. Not by choice, but war did not wait for choices. He turned his face away. I'm sorry, he said, words that felt thin and brittle against a grief that old. But Wiyaka only stared at him. Are you? That night he could not sleep. Her words haunted him. Was he sorry? Or was he just broken? In the morning, she was gone. Left without sound or sign, like wind through the grass. Panic, sharp and bitter, rose in his throat. Not fear for himself, but for her. The world out there was cruel to women alone, especially women who healed instead of killed. He staggered to his feet, weak but alive. Tracks in the dirt, small, light-footed. He followed. Hours passed. The sun climbed. Flies buzzed around his ears. And then, voices. Low, menacing. White men. 3 of them. Ragged clothes. Rifles. Drunk on whiskey and bloodlust. They circled her like wolves. Well, ain't you a pretty little doe? One sneered, grabbing at the necklace around her throat. Jack didn't think. Didn't hesitate. He moved like word taught him. Fast, brutal. His fist shattered the first man's nose. The second swung his rifle up, too slow. Jack's shoulder rammed into him, sent them both sprawling. The third man cursed, knife gleaming in the sun. But Wiyaka was faster. The blade of her own hunting knife flashed, sharp as prairie wind, carving a red line across the attacker's hand. He screamed, dropped the weapon. The other 2 scrambled to their feet, bloodied but alive, and fled into the trees, their curses fading like cowards in the wind. Breath heaving, Jack turned. She stood there, still as stone, blood on her knife, not trembling. A warrior's heart beat beneath the healer's skin. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. None was needed. From that moment, a bond was forged. Not of love, not yet, but of respect, of survival. They returned to the camp, silent but together. Later, as the stars bled across the black sky, Jack sat by the fire. You saved me, he said again. This time, she did not correct him, but she said, softly, we saved each other. The prairie wind whispered around them, the song of a land old and fierce. Jack Callahan stared into the fire, and for the first time in a long time, wondered if life still held something worth fighting for. He glanced at Wiyaka, the Lakota healer who fought like a warrior and healed like the earth itself. Maybe the road wasn't so lonely after all, but danger was never far. And in the distance, beyond the dark line of the hills, another shadow gathered. Not soldiers, something worse, something hunting them both. And the prairie waited, patient as death, for what would come next. The fire had burned low, its glow no match for the bloody dawn spilling across the high plains. Luke Coulter sat with his back to a withered cottonwood, shotgun loose across his knees, boots heavy with mud, his spirit heavier still. He'd not slept, not with the sounds of coyotes wailing on the ridge, not with ghosts clawing at his ribs. Behind him, in the shelter of the rock outcropping, Akachita knelt beside the Lakota healer, Wiyan. Her small frame shook with fever. The wound across her side, left by the knife of a drunken bounty man 2 nights past, was angry, festering. Luke could smell it in the windless dark, coppery, thick, near sour. She had saved his life. Twice now. And he was a man who didn't forget debts paid in blood. Luke's jaw worked. Somewhere to the east, beyond the Black Hills, beyond the charred remains of his past, a new dawn waited. But there was no getting there without a fight. The war hadn't ended for him. Not really. The Confederacy fell, but what rose from its ashes was worse. Lawless men, greedy men. The kind who saw a Lakota healer not as a woman with wisdom, but a price to be collected. And they were coming. Akachita crouched beside him, sharp-eyed, his face hard as sun-baked stone. The warrior had tracked the bounty hunters, 3 of them, circling like buzzards waiting for the weak to stagger. Luke nodded toward Wiyan. How long does she have? Akachita's gaze didn't waver. Until the next sun sets, unless she rests safe. Unless we reach my people. Luke cursed low. The reservation lands were still days away, and between here and there lay nothing but hard earth and harder men. The drifter stood, stretching the ache from his bones. His shadow cut long across the dirt, ragged like the man himself. The Colt at his hip felt heavier than it ever had. I am to buy her time, Luke said. Akachita studied him, then nodded once. Not as a man accepting help, but as a warrior acknowledging a brother in arms. When the sun crested the ridge, the bounty men came. First was Creed, grizzled, whiskey-eyed, wearing a Confederate cavalry coat blackened by blood and weather. Behind him rode Jeb and Hollis, mean-faced scavengers with nothing but bullets in their hearts. Luke stepped into the clearing, shotgun cradled loose, boots steady in the dust. Creed spat. Thought you'd run further, Coulter. Ain't like you to stand your ground. Luke's voice cut like gravel dragged across iron. Did my running in Virginia. Buried enough men to know the taste of it. Creed grinned, slow and cruel. That squaw's worth a fortune in Dodge. Medicine woman like that? White men'll pay out their teeth. Luke's heart kicked like a wild horse, but his voice stayed iron flat. Ain't happening. Jeb laughed sharp. You alone, Coulter? A sound came from behind the rocks. The war cry of the plains. Akachita rose from the scrub, bow taut, eyes burning with fury older than any of them. Creed's grin faltered. Luke cocked the shotgun. No, Jeb. I ain't alone. The air split. Akachita's arrow found Hollis's throat, clean, merciless. Blood sprayed the dust red. Luke moved faster than thought. Shotgun roaring, the first barrel catching Jeb square in the chest, folding him like dry paper. Creed dove behind a fallen log, returning fire. Splinters bit Luke's cheek, hot and stinging. Luke dropped the empty scattergun, drawing his Colt. Every step toward Creed was another heartbeat closer to death. Creed's voice was a snake's hiss. Ain't no redemption left for men like us, Coulter. Luke's boots crunched closer. Didn't ask for redemption, Luke said. Didn't ask for this war to follow me here. He flanked left, empty canteen in hand, flinging it high. Creed's shot tracked the noise. Luke moved right, silent, deadly. When Creed turned, it was too late. The Colt barked once. Creed's body hit the dirt, eyes wide, mouth slack in final disbelief. Silence fell. Akachita lowered his bow. Luke stood over Creed's body for a long moment. The past had a way of clawing at a man, but some ghosts you had to bury yourself. By the time they reached Wiyan again, she was barely conscious. Sweat slicked her brow, her breath shallow. Akachita worked quickly, grinding herbs, whispering prayers in Lakota that the wind carried like fragile leaves. Luke sat beside her, rough hand closing around her smaller one. Hold on, he murmured. You're stronger than this cursed land. Stronger than me. Night bled into morning. When her eyes fluttered open, they were glazed but aware. She managed a faint, pained smile. You stayed, she whispered. Luke's throat tightened. I reckon I'm tired of running. By the second day, they reached the edge of Lakota lands. A line of riders approached. Akachita's kin, faces stern but not unkind. Wiyan was lifted with care. Akachita spoke fast in their tongue, nodding toward Luke. An elder approached the drifter. His face was creased with years of wind and wisdom. You carry the blood of war on you, the elder said. But you carry honor, too. Luke dipped his head. Didn't come looking for war. Just couldn't leave her behind. The elder nodded. Then you have a place at our fire. For tonight. Luke exhaled slow. Maybe the road wouldn't always be lonely. Night settled, the fire crackling warm. Wiyan rested safe, her breath stronger now, color returning to her cheeks. Luke sat a ways apart, staring into flame and shadow. Akachita joined him, quiet. She will heal, the warrior said. Luke nodded. And what of me? Akachita's dark eyes were steady. The scars we carry are maps of where we've been, not chains to hold us. Luke let the words settle. He had buried enough of his past. Enough men. Enough ghosts. Maybe it was time to build something new. The wind shifted, carrying voices. Laughter, stories, songs of survival older than any empire. Luke Coulter sat beside the fire, a drifter no longer lost, but found. And for the first time in a long time, he believed in the promise of morning. Because the frontier wasn't just a place. It was a test of will, and he was still standing.